there as well. I do have one question at the beginning asking you guys to put something into the chat. So just kind of a gauge of the room.
I started the recording, Laura, and I'm going to go live here on Facebook.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
While that's happening, just to let you know, if you do have your camera on, you still will not be showing on Facebook or in the recording unless you speak.
Yes. Yeah, so if you don't want to show, don't say anything. Hi, Mary Carr. It's been a long day, but we're here. Okay. So welcome everyone to our parent engagement mini-series. We are looking at parent reports tonight and how do we communicate progress with our families. I'm gonna be looking specifically at Google Sheets tonight. That's been my favorite way of communicating progress with our families. I am a member of Monterey Bay Q, and also I serve on the board as the secretary, so that's who I am. Oh no. Go with this. Oh wow, lots of that didn't show. Anyways, my name is Lora Carey. You can find me on Twitter at Teacher Laura. My student Twitter account is Carey Scholars, and I get to teach at Montebello Elementary School, which is awesome. Go Scholars! All the pieces of things that are missing on this page are the things that I love to do when I'm not at school, as well as a picture of my cat who may decide to wake up and walk through this meet meowing. He has food, he has water, he's well cared for, he just likes to meow. And also our not class pet, the donated to school turtle that's also named Turbo, is not missing here. He's also missing off this page, but that's kind of the gist of this page if it had loaded correctly. So not sure what happened there. So when I first started teaching, this was my reaction when I thought about parents. I had worked with parents quite a bit in my previous career, I guess, but the idea of having to communicate progress to parents and justify kind of their progress or lack of progress kind of intimidated me. And parents in general kind of intimidated me because they had the most power in my mind of like what happens with their students and how their students react and what their students do. It freaked me out. But through the course of the school year and just really realizing how much I never really had negative interactions with parents, but I don't think I had enough interaction with parents. If you joined us with in our Google Meet, in our meet last night, you might have heard us talk a little bit about what parents want. And one of the things that parents wanted was consistent communication of progress. And I was pretty close to I communicate progress at report card time and parent teacher conferences. That was just kind of where I was at. This last school year, I upped my communication of progress to parents. I did a lot more reaching out to parents, inviting parents into my classroom. I just completely overhauled how I approach parents and approaching parents as partners. So that completely changed my mindset into something that whereas we've got this. And it really became a strong we, which when we went on to into shelter in place, made a huge difference in my overall perspective on how I taught and what I taught and how I communicated progress, to the point where I was communicating with parents not just once a week, but more often, closer to 2 to 3 times a week for some parents. And some of the feedback I got from parents was really appreciative. And I felt more like I was on a team with my parents, that we were working together for the benefit of their kids. And I wasn't just by myself in the classroom, hoping that I was doing the right thing. And so here's my first question. How did you communicate progress or work completion to your students? And this could be before COVID, this could be during COVID. What was your communication process? And you can drop that into the chat if you want to right now. Do you have any thoughts on that? I know that Ben, when he was in 6th grade, I found like he was cleaning out some books in my classroom, and I came across these little tiny slips of paper that had a very brief description of a student, what they were doing, how they were doing in class, and it was pretty cool to see one version of it. Any other ideas? Anyone else want to chime in here? Okay. So Google Classroom and Class Dojo. I definitely use Class Dojo, but I was using it more to communicate behavior than I was progress. Remind is awesome. Class Dojo is a super powerful tool as well. Lots of messages on Parent Square. Yep. Those are all really great ways to communicate. And I think some of this came out of one of my parents. I got a lot of my parents on Google Classroom. So they were going to start the summaries, and they were also on Seesaw. But I had a dad who, it just really, he kind of challenged me in a really positive way to say, well, how do I really know like exactly what my student's missing? And that's what generated this idea, I believe, of going into Sheets. Yep, Google Classroom and email. Email is awesome. We didn't have a good way of collecting all of our parents' emails last year or having consistent email, but I think this year that's gonna be stronger for sure. And so I started looking to Sheets as a way to really lay out what had been completed, what still needed to be completed, and thinking about how I could communicate with parents. So real quickly before we continue on, how do you all feel about Sheets? Rate yourself from a 0, like what's Sheets, to like I absolutely know my Sheets. Okay, so we got some 1s, we got some 2s. Okay, lots of 1s, cool. Okay, so I'm gonna, oh no, someone hates Sheets, uh-oh. So I came from a background where I used Excel, not as an expert by any means, but I was really familiar with Excel and how to like manipulate data in Excel. So when I came to Sheets, there's every once in a while I come across something and it doesn't compute across, but I really like Sheets. And I know it, and I will admit, Sheets is not pretty. It's not designed to be pretty, it's designed to show data. So if you're someone who really likes pretty, at the end I'll give you some ideas on how to make it pretty, but it's data. So, all right. Yeah, I too also prefer Excel over Sheets. However, I don't have Sheets on Excel on my current school computer. All I have is Sheets or numbers, and numbers scares me really, really bad. So, and yeah, the formulas definitely can be intimidating in Sheets, but I'm not going to get super complicated. Nothing on here involved a formula. This is what I had for my first thing I did. I had all my students on one side. I had all the things they were supposed to do, and it changed as we were going through thing. We started out with using Zern as a way of communicating doing math, and then it became, oh goodness, Zern doesn't work really well in the way that I wanted it to. So I switched to doing math in Seesaw, and this picture is the week that I was transitioning from Zern to Seesaw, so it's still giving kids credit for working in Zern. But this worked really well for me as a teacher. I can see all the student data, and like the same week I came up with this, Ben comes out with this, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah. So at that point I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go with perfect. I'm not gonna go with perfect, I'm gonna go with done rather than perfect, because sometimes done is better than perfect, because at least that way I have it and it's set. So what I went with this, but my biggest challenge was thinking about what my parents needed to know on that spreadsheet. What do they absolutely have to know? And so at this point, go ahead and put in the chat some of the things that you would want your parents to know if you're communicating progress. And Ben's sheet, I believe, is linked to his actual original that you can make a copy of, because he shares things. I'm not giving you a copy of mine because mine's like so far behind his, but you can see that. Okay, work completion, attendance, participation, online engagement. Yes, especially right now, because as what we're looking at from the state is online engagement and engagement in materials, and how do we engage engagement and make sure that we're meeting those minutes. Okay, online work attendance, completion, yep. All right, so that's what so for me in my brain, this is what I'm leaning towards right now. I wanna make sure I'm logging their Google Meets, their face-to-face interactions, because I know that the state's gonna ask me about that, or my district school. core content completion. Whatever that counts for you and whether you're in high school, middle school, or elementary school, what is core content? What is the absolute they have to complete? Because sometimes we'll assign things that aren't necessarily, like, they're optional, they're not as important, but what are the absolute must-dos? And then, of course, the district tools, because we kind of have to use those. So in my district, that's Lexia, along with a couple other things. And then I want to put links to my class website, to things that parents might need. So that way, when they go look at their student progress, they also have access to everything else at the same time. Kind of a one-stop shop without being a full website. And of course, yes, parents do need to know how to access this. So, and I'll make sure, and I do have that included here. Well, things that I'm not including are AR data. They can access that through Home Connect, and that Home Connect is the link to a screencast showing you how to, it's a soundless screencast, but it's a screencast showing you how to get to the parent letters to get parents connected to Home Connect, so they get emails of their student progress and they can log in and see what AR quizzes their kids have taken. So that way it's not taking up space. Yep. And yeah, site admins do have to enable your parent AR Home Connect. So if you don't have that enabled, it's going to slow you down a little bit. And also you need to also think about, is AR something you really want to track during this time when students may or may not have access to books if your school library is closed? And if you don't, and depending on whether or not you're sending home books, if your students don't have access to books, I wouldn't be tracking AR, because it's an equity and access issue. And I also originally I had like all of my specific projects listed. Really not useful, because it began to clutter up the end of my spreadsheet, because I had like the colony report. Well, that was only due one week. Then I have a different project, or I had science, and certain things started to become a long, kind of cumbersome, kind of gross spreadsheet by the time I ended the school year. So a couple things, some setup tricks, tips and tricks, and I will show you kind of how they all apply in my actual spreadsheet and what I'm thinking of for next year. And I'll walk you through the process of what I did in a little bit, because there's something, either missed a slide or we're coming to it. So a couple tips and tricks. If you don't know, and I've come across people who are very techie who didn't know about this in the test, so don't take it personally if I'm covering something you already know here. But text wrap is a really, really important tool. You're going to, text wrap allows you to basically, instead of having everything stretch across your entire screen, it'll then wrap that text and loop it in. So that way you end up with 2 lines or 3 lines or 4 lines, or a block of text, as opposed to a text that runs away from you. You want to make sure that if you hit Control and Enter at the same time, it'll actually basically create, it's like hitting Enter on a Word document, essentially. So like, say I have a line of text and I want it to break at a certain point, I can hit Control or Command and return Enter, and it will then go ahead and actually enter, as opposed to moving to the next cell down. I kept my first and last names in separate columns, and I'll explain why in a little bit, but it makes it much easier to sort. And I used filters. So many times we tend to use the sort button, and which will sort by alphabetical in one column, but then all the rest of your data becomes disaggregated. It becomes separate from what you just sorted. If you use filters, it allows you to filter the data based on that column, and all the other data that's attached to that row shifts to match with that row. So I'm going to show you all this a little bit. And of course, keep your naming for your sheet tabs simple, because when you go to actually share it, it makes it a lot easier and much easier to read across the bottom. Okay. And then of course, we have merging cells, and merging cells makes it much easier to label things all the way across and make it clear what you're referring to. But this was my biggest question going into this, is how could I share work privately with parents without emailing and texting and class dojoing each individual parent every single week? Because I'd have parents texting me like, did my kid do their work today? And I'm like, sitting there going like, okay, now I've got to go look up that kid. And I've got another parent. Did my kid do their work today? They said they did. Miss Carey, can you tell my parents I did my work so that way I can get my Xbox back? All of those things. So and I also had families and parents who, okay, interesting. And I had parents and I also didn't really want to share my students' work publicly. And in the sense that I didn't want all my families to see every student's work. Okay, let me go back there. Because if I could obviously share my Google Sheet. I could share that sheet with all of their data and that would be done. All the parents could see their students' work. It'd be easy. But then I'd also have parents who see other kids' work and or their completion. And I already had I had fantastic families, fantastic kids, but there was also a little bit of well, Alex didn't do his work, or so-and-so didn't do their work, or I want you to do better than that kid over there. So there was kind of this weird competitiveness, and I didn't really want to feed into that. And I also felt like it's kind of a violation of student privacy when you're sharing. Even though I'm not sharing grades, I'm still sharing more information that I'm really comfortable with, because it's really no one else's business but their parents and mine. So in order to do that, I went ahead and I started. That was really cute. I'm pretty sure that was my I want more GIF of Ariel singing to the sky. So instead, I decided to go with a published link. And the benefits of a published link, it allowed me to send, okay, this, interesting, okay. I'm not sure what's going on tonight, so I'm definitely missing some slides at the moment. So if you have the actual document, you might be getting some different information right about now. So I went with published links, and the benefit of a published link was I could publish individual students. And I'm just gonna leave this, and I'm gonna start sharing my screen in a different way, because I think we've skipped quite a bit here. So give me a second. All right, so this right here is what, and I've taken off all of my students' last names, so I'm not giving away any details here above and beyond. This is what I saw as a teacher, and what I wanted my parents, so I ended up giving my parents the ability to see, and I switched out midway through, so this is what I wanted my parents to be able to see is something a little bit more. In fact, I have something open here like this. And what this is it's one page. All I want them to see is their students. So I made pages across the bottom. I made sheets essentially across the bottom, one for each student. So if you can see down here, we have Matthew, Valeria, Aaliyah, Tomas, Alexia, Zahara, Arturo, all of my students. So I made individual pages. Now, if I shared my Google Sheet, I would share it so that everyone can see this. But I can share individual sheets by using publishing. And so in order to publish a sheet, you can head on over to File, and I go down to this lovely thing called Publish to the Web. When you click on Publish to the Web, it gives you the option to publish the entire document. Maybe you've been to some trainings or some conferences and they've published. You can't see it. Thank you so much for telling me. Great, okay. I'm so bad at this. Okay, I thought I was sharing my whole screen at the same time. I don't know what happened there. Okay, let's try this. Thank you so much for calling that out. I really appreciate that. Okay. All right. Can someone let me know if you can, someone let me know if you can actually see it now, just real quickly before I continue on, because I'm going to back myself up here.
Yeah, we can see Publish to the Web.
Yay, thank you. Okay. You know, technology is going to fail at least once or twice. It's all good. It's Friday, right? It's Friday. So let me go back to this. So what I was saying before was that, I think this is the one I like. Okay. I can have all my student work. They can see everything. If I share this, I end up sharing everything. And I share everything just for everyone, including all those sheets, but by creating student pages, I can then share these individual pages, not by going to the share button in the corner, but by going to publish to the web. It's under file. You can do this in slides as well. So if you are a slides person and you want to make a gorgeous slide and do individual student information on the slides, go for it. In fact, there's a way to take your spreadsheets using Autocrat and take what's on the spreadsheet and have it auto-populate to a slide deck. And it's gorgeous. One of the teachers at my school site does that. It's beautiful and gorgeous, and that's her style. And I'm a little bit more nitty gritty, so I kind of just go with this. Because once again, when she shares a slide deck, it shares like the whole slide deck with all students' data. It's still pretty, but it shows all students' data. And I'm really kind of a stickler for making sure that students' data stays private, even though it's not necessarily data. I don't know. Okay, so here's what I do. I hit publish to the web. I hit entire document, not entire document. I want to publish just one student's. So I'm going to pick a student and I select web page. And this is a little different right now because I've already done it, but it will eventually give me this. Let me flip to this one. All right. This is what I'm planning on doing for next year. It's much cleaner. It's prettier. I've merged these cells. I've added links to the class calendar up across the top. So much nicer. But what I'm going to do is in order to make this work, and we're gonna go from this point. Like this is like me starting the school year. I'm gonna do all of my first trimester all at once. So I'm gonna type in week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and then just click and drag it down, and it gives me all of my weeks at a glance, essentially. And this is just what one student would see. And I think I actually have 11 weeks in a trimester, but we're going to forget about that right now. We're just going to roll with it tonight. Once technology kind of dies, we're just going to roll with it. So here's one student's page. I'm going to duplicate a page for every single student. This is my setup process. And then I would go ahead and rename it something really simple, something that's not identifiable, because this will become the name of the web page, so to speak, that I'm sharing with parents. So for now, I'm just going to name it Student 2. And when I go over to Student 2, all of my formatting held, which is really nice. So I want to make sure that that my template is completely ready before I make all of my copies for all of my students, because that was one of the mistakes I made, is I made kind of a generic template, and then I realized I wanted to change it midway through, and every time I changed it, I had to change it for 33 copies of it, which is not fun. So then what I did, and this probably seems really, really redundant, I would go in, I would take all my student information that was filled out for the week, and this is weird, it's not coming out looking nice. Okay, I would take my student information, I would go over to student 1, I would paste it, and then I would cut the rest of the information, Control X, and I would go to the next student, and then paste the next student's the next student's information. I did that wrong. And I would continue to do that for every single one, reducing by one line each time. It was a little time consuming, but it worked. And so I would start with, let me take this. I would go students, there we go. And I would start on the week, the same week, drop it off, take the second line on, Command X, go to the next students. And I just hit the wrong thing. And I have a little tutorial showing you how to do all this. And I just copy and paste, basically reducing it, but taking the next line down essentially each time until I got to the last student, and I dropped off one line at each student all the way down the alphabet. and it worked, and it was useful. So now, okay. Because I'm missing slides, unfortunately, I'm a little scattered, and I'm gonna apologize for that. Because that was, I don't know what happened with the screen sharing and my slide deck. But so I keep first names and last names separate so that I can filter. And you can filter, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit here. So I grab my title headers, I highlight, and I hit the filter button. By filtering, I can now filter my students by first name, because all of my Seesaw data is by first name, but all of my Lexia data is by last name. So when I do that, all of A's data stays with A, even though I just sorted it by last name. But when I go back and sort by first name, all of A's data stays the same, all of C's data stays the same, and all of D's data stay the same. I didn't lose any data by sorting. By filtering, I can also then sort by all the students I didn't see on Tuesday or did see on Tuesday. So I just sorted by Tuesday, and now I know exactly which 2 students I might need to contact rather than trying to read down a line. So filters are your friends, especially when you're trying to put in data that's sorted in different ways depending on the program that you're using, and you can't always sort it the way you would find most useful. So once I had all my data in for the week, I would copy and paste it on each page. And it was a little time consuming, but it's not bad. And I'm coming up with different ways to do it. But what I would do in order to share the data, finally gonna get to this point, I would go to publish to the web for student 1. I don't want to publish the entire document because once again, I'm not sharing everything with everyone. I'm sharing just, I want just student 1's link. So I'm making a link for student 1. I want it to be in a web page format for the families. And come on. That's everything. I'm gonna grab my link, and that's the link that down here at the bottom it says automatically republish when changes are made. And I'm not requiring reviewers to sign in with their South School District email because parents don't have that. And I can also, anytime I can stop publishing the student's work. So I can even put pictures of student work on here that I want to share with the parent. I can put anything I want just the parent to see because I'm only sharing that link with that parent. Now the parent may share it beyond me, but it's initially, right now, it's just between me and the parent. And so that means every time I update and if I go to this link, it will automatically show that student's data and just that student's data. Okay. And parents are able to see this on a mobile phone. So that's one of the other reasons why I'm like, even as I'm looking at this right now, thinking about the school year, I don't want it to go super far over, and I am zoomed in right now. If there was a way to make the data easy to use that was vertical, I definitely would, but they can see it on a mobile phone. And so what the parent sees when they go in to check their student work is this. Now, right now, this is obviously not correct because I didn't finish copying and pasting all the way down for all my students, but it does show everything. It shows everything that's there. Now, I love Ben's vertical text because it saves so much space, but one of the things that we discovered, and I don't know if we've figured out a way to overcome it, is that when you use the vertical text and then you share it with parents, it does this weird thing where the text goes too far, essentially. It doesn't actually, how do I say it? Basically, the text does not stay vertical, it goes horizontal and then it gets all crazy. That's what I'm trying to say. So it doesn't stay as pretty as it could. So that's why I'm keeping everything horizontal, because I know that it'll transfer well to the other devices. And I keep the link to each individual. I keep the link to each individual student's page on their page in the first column, because I'm not really going to copy or paste anything in this first column. And if a parent ever asks for it, I just pull up the spreadsheet, snag this link, and then share it with that parent again. So one of my parents, banker, loved Google Classroom. He's like, and loved the Seesaw Access, but he's like, I want more, and this is really because of him in a lot of ways. So I'm gonna blame the parent here, but in a good way, because it forced me to really think about how I was sharing data and the overall focus of that data and how to do it in a private way. So now as I'm thinking towards next year and in tools, I thought macros would help me do this. I don't really know anything about macros, but macros sounded really smart and cool because people talk about macros when they talk about spreadsheets. As best I can tell, I can't figure out if a macro would actually help me here, but one of the things that would help me in this situation is a lovely little code formula. And I know one of you said, not formulas. This formula is really, I personally am really excited about. This formula is pretty awesome. It's a formula and it's listed. I do have it on the actual, okay, hopefully you guys can see I'm hoping maybe we can see this presentation again. So I do have a screencast of my process with everything, so you can see kind of how I copied and pasted across. It's slightly time consuming, and that's why I was trying to come up with a better formula that I could do at the beginning of the school year and then not have to worry about it for the rest of the school, for the rest of the trimester essentially. And I would just make a copy of the spreadsheet that I was using and then continue to use the same spreadsheet, just renaming it so that way parents would just see trimester by trimester overall progress. So that's my goal. One spreadsheet for the year. At the end of the trimester, I make a copy of that of the spreadsheet, and then basically that becomes trimester 1, and I just rename the same spreadsheet trimester 2, and then trimester 2 becomes is this old spreadsheet. I just clean out the student data. I basically what I'll do is I'll just clean out my main data sheet, and then use my handy dandy formula to repopulate all 11 weeks of the trimester. That's my goal, and this is how I'm going to do it. So in order to do it, I'm going to zoom. All right, I'm going to zoom in on the formula bar for y'all. Equals starts your formula, and my formula in this case is going to be equal, and then it's going to be the name of the sheet that I'm referencing, that I'm pulling the data from. And I'm going to be pulling the data from week 1. And I'm going to use the exact name of my sheet, which is capitalized, and week 1, which is why I wrote week 1 all as one word, essentially. Week 1, exclamation mark, because we are always excited about the first week. I don't know why, but this is important. Do not forget the exclamation mark. Week 1, so sheet that I'm referencing, so equals sheet that I'm referencing, exclamation mark, and then the name of the column that I'm pulling from. And the column that I'm pulling from is C5, I'm pretty sure. All right, when it turns a lovely color, that means this is an actual valid formula, so then we know that we've done something right. If it doesn't turn a color, I did something wrong. So this is good. And it's even telling me that what the value that's going to show here is X. So now that lovely little formula has now transferred the data that was hiding in C5 to this thing. Now ideally C5 would actually correspond to student number 2. And so I should have done this. So technically I should have gone to week 1, student 2, which I would probably name their actual name. I wouldn't leave it student 2 because that's what we labeled as on the parents, when the parent clicked on it when the parent goes to see their child's progress, it says their child's name up at the top because it says the name of the sheet. So like this is the student sheet name and then the student's name. So I wouldn't want it to be like student 2 because that doesn't go well for parents. So what I would want to do is instead make sure I label it with that correct student's name. So in this case, student 2 is not C6, it actually is C6. Okay, so C6 would be, so I should have put C6, and then the next one is going to be D6. That's the next formula reference. And then the next one will be E6. So something pretty cool about sheets is that I can go ahead and I can copy and paste my formulas if I want to. But in this case, I would want to go with, so this would be D6. And it's already starting to change for me when I copy and paste. And now I'm on E6 up here, and you can't see it because it's super small, but so basically every time I've moved over one cell, the formula has already been updating for me. And if I click here, drag across, grab the little blue square, and I keep going, it's gonna take all the data I have for that student in that line. So now I have D6, E6, F, should have been not F, I grabbed F5 because I had a 5 here. But if I had kept it consistently for row 6, line 6, by dragging it, which is what we did, what I did for student 1, should be, oh, I lost it when I copied and pasted here. Oh well. But basically, if I kept this as C6, okay, and then I went ahead and grabbed it, those 3, and pulled them across. Now it should read, okay, this is C6, D6, E6, F6, G6, H6, I6, and then it would keep going. So if I set this up at the beginning of the school year, so that I'm pulling the same data from each week cell all the way across. So if week 1 stays the same as week 2, and week 3 stays the same, and each week consistently stays the same. Now that's assuming I don't add new students. If I add a student, I would want to put them at the bottom of my list, so that way I'm not messing up my formatting, because that means that every week I can say that each week, so week 1's going to pull from C6, week 3 is going to pull from C6 on Monday every single time, because C6 every single time, C6 is going to pull from this specific cell. All I have to do is change the name of the sheet each time. I'm going to pause for a second if that makes sense. So that's my hope, by setting it up ahead of time at the beginning of the school year, instead of being reactionary in how I set up and communicate progress, that if I can be proactive, I'll have all the data ready to go. And as I update one spreadsheet, it's going to populate all my student spreadsheets. So all I have to do is share the link with my parents. And that's my goal, as opposed to having to copy and paste data all the way across. Yep. So parents should be able to see all this on a mobile phone. I was even thinking it'd be kind of fun to, I don't want to personalize it too much, because one of the nice parts about this is, aside from the first name, there's no identifying information. So even if like some random person in Russia got a hold of this information, it's meaningless. And except for the fact that I might pop on my Google Classroom link, my website, a sign-up sheet for parents, so that way if they get this link, they can also sign up for more notifications, as well as a public class calendar that we talked about last night. So, all right, we are about 5 minutes from the end. Are there any questions before I continue, or anything you guys would like clarified? Because I know I got really jumbled there for a little bit, and I'm so sorry, guys. All right. Yes, there is a video. So the video on the slide deck really, it was from when I first developed this, and so it really just shows how to set everything up, like, and then so it shows how to publish, and it shows me copying and pasting across all the students. And the process over the summer is kind of like, as you reflect on your practice, as you reflect on everything, that's when I started to look for a better way of doing it that didn't require me to have to do as much copying and pasting, because it's a little tedious on a Friday, you know, and then I'd have to do it multiple times a week. So the link to the slide deck is, let me go ahead and grab that for y'all. The link to the slide deck the link to the slide deck. Okay, the link to the slide deck is right here. You can see all the slides that didn't load for some reason, but I tend to put a lot of screenshots in, which is probably why, and there's no one else here to really be on the internet, so I don't know why they didn't load, but there's screenshots to help guide you in the process and hopefully help you, and also with some of the tips and tricks, like things like filtering. I do like little screenshots so you can see things. So I want to make sure you all can see that. I also want to make sure that I do this the correct way this time and actually share the real feedback link with everyone, because last night didn't do that. So, although I'm a little scared to share the feedback link now. Just kidding. I am a 5th grade teacher. That is where my heart and passion is right now. But so this presenting on Zoom is not my day job, but I'm definitely learning a lot every time I do it. So I appreciate your patience, your questions. If you need anything, please make sure you let me know, because I would gladly like sit down and do a Google Meet with you and walk you through it. If you guys have any ideas on how to improve what I've just done, please share those. Go ahead, please share those links with me, or ideas with me, because I'd love to make it better. I'd love to share with people. I'd love to help you make yours better, because that's how we become better as teachers, is going forward. So please, yeah, share if you want me to, and I would gladly meet up with you and help you with all of your sheet name needs or formula needs. The formula that I use is in here as well. So since I'm not totally sure what gets shown at this point, what doesn't get shown. So the formula is equals the sheet name, exact sheet name, exclamation mark C2, which is why I keep my sheet names very simple. Because I discovered that when they have spaces and like subtraction signs or the dashes in them, Excel sheets tends to read those as formulas on their own, and that's not what I wanted. I want just the sheet name. So keep your sheet name simple. It also makes it easier to get across your sheets when you're dealing with 33 sheets. If you have short names, not like April 13th through the 27th, because that is a long name. All right. Okay, so yes, and then Monday night, if you are a Monterey Bay person, affiliate member, you belong to Q. It's a free membership. We are having an affiliate meeting Monday night. If you're an affiliate member, you should have gotten an email with that information. So please check your whatever email you get your Q details from. So I hope you can join us and hang out with us on Monday. Woo!